Michael hadn't seen these gates in 12 years. Now he stood on the wrong side with his daughter Katie shivering beside him, her hand ice cold in his. 4 security guards blocked their path. The head of security, Vincent, stepped forward with cold authority, his eyes dismissive. Private property. Turn around. Michael could have begged, could have explained. Instead, he looked Vincent straight in the eye and said 5 words that drained every trace of color from the man's face. Tell Richard I've come home. The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the November air still carried that damp chill that worked its way into your bones and stayed there. Michael stood at the iron gates and felt 12 years of absence press against his chest. The gates looked exactly as he remembered. Tall, black, unforgiving. Beyond them, the mansion rose against the darkening sky, every window glowing with warm light that seemed designed to remind him of everything he'd lost. Katie's fingers tightened around his. She hadn't said much since they got off the bus 2 miles back. 10 years old, and already she understood when silence was the only language available. Her face was pale, even in the dim light, dark circles under her eyes making her look like a ghost of herself. 3 weeks. That's what the oncologist had said, his voice carefully neutral. 3 weeks to find a way to pay for the bone marrow transplant Katie needed, or start preparing for the end. Is this really your house, Dad? Her voice was barely more than a whisper. It was. Michael shifted the backpack on his shoulder. Everything they owned fit inside it. 2 changes of clothes, Katie's medications, a photograph of Sarah that was starting to fade at the edges. A long time ago. The intercom buzzed. A camera swiveled toward them, its red light blinking. Michael heard footsteps on gravel, then voices. 4 men emerged from the guardhouse, flashlights cutting white paths through the twilight. They moved with military precision, hands near their weapons. The man in front was older, maybe 50, with iron-gray hair and shoulders that looked like they'd carried weight for decades. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished. When he stopped 6 feet away, his hand rested near the radio on his belt. "Private property," he said. The words came out flat. Final. "Turn around." Michael recognized him. Vincent. Richard had mentioned him in one of their last conversations, back when they still spoke. Head of security, former Marine, the kind of man who followed orders and expected compliance. "I need to speak with whoever owns this house," Michael said. Vincent's expression didn't change. "Mr. Blackwell doesn't meet with solicitors." The name hit Michael hard. Mr. Blackwell, his brother, living in their father's house, carrying their father's legacy. "Please," Michael said. The word tasted like surrender. "Just tell him. I said turn around." Vincent stepped forward. The other guards shifted position, forming a semicircle. Katie coughed, a wet rattling sound. Vincent's eyes flicked toward her, and for just a second, something almost human crossed his face. Michael made his decision. "Tell Richard I've come home." The change in Vincent was immediate. Color drained from his face like water down a drain. His hand moved away from the radio, hung suspended, then dropped. "What did you say?" Vincent's voice had lost its edge. "You heard me." Michael held his gaze. "Tell Richard that Michael is here. He'll understand." Vincent stared at him, really looked at him. Michael watched recognition dawn in the man's eyes. "Jesus Christ," Vincent muttered. He pulled out his phone, turned away, spoke quietly. When he turned back, his face was carefully neutral. "Mr. Blackwell will see you. Follow me." They didn't go through the front gates. Vincent led them around to a service entrance, a narrow path through bare trees. The message was clear. "You're not a guest." The door opened into a mudroom that smelled like wet coats and floor wax. Vincent gestured for them to wait, then disappeared. Michael heard voices in another room, too distant to understand. Katie pressed against his side. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay." It was the same lie he'd been telling her for 3 months. Ever since the doctor said leukemia with that careful tone. Ever since the bills started arriving with numbers that made no sense. Ever since he'd run out of options and turned to the one place he'd sworn he'd never come back to. Footsteps approached. Michael straightened. The man who entered looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Tailored suit, expensive watch, perfect hair. But it was his eyes that made Michael's chest tighten. The same eyes he saw in the mirror. The same eyes their father had. Cold now, but unmistakably familiar. 12 years, Richard said quietly. And now you crawl back. Michael had rehearsed this moment 100 times. All those words evaporated now. I need your help, he said. Katie is sick. Richard's gaze dropped to Katie. His expression softened for just a moment, then hardened again. Why should I help the man who destroyed our family? Michael felt Katie look up at him, waiting for an answer that made sense. Because she's 10 years old, Michael said, and she's done nothing to you. Richard was silent for a long time. A clock ticked somewhere in the house. Vincent, Richard said without looking away. Show them to the basement quarters. They can stay tonight. He turned to leave, paused. Tomorrow morning, we'll talk about terms. The basement room was small but clean. A bed, a dresser, a bathroom. After 3 weeks of sleeping in the car, it felt like luxury. Katie collapsed onto the bed, her eyes already closing. Michael sat beside her, pulled the blanket up. Her skin felt too warm. The fever was back. Is Uncle Richard going to help us? Katie asked. I don't know, sweetheart. He seems mad at you. He has reason to be. Michael smoothed her hair back. What did you do? How did you explain adult mistakes to a child? I made a choice, Michael said. I thought it was the right one, but it hurt a lot of people. Katie was quiet. Then, did you do it because you thought you were supposed to? Or because you wanted to? The question hit him like a physical blow, because that was it. That was the truth he'd been avoiding for 12 years. Go to sleep, he said softly. We'll figure this out tomorrow. But Katie was already asleep. Michael sat in the dark and listened to the house settle. Somewhere above, his brother was awake too, probably thinking about the same night. The night the police came, the night their father fell, the night everything ended. Morning came with a knock. Vincent stood in the hallway. Mr. Blackwell wants to see you, alone. Someone would bring Katie breakfast, Vincent said. She'd be safe. Richard's office overlooked the dead winter gardens. The room was different now, darker, heavier, colder. Richard sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Michael earned in a year. Sit. Michael sat. You look terrible, Richard observed. It's been a hard few months. Richard pulled out a folder. Katie, age 10, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Needs a bone marrow transplant within 3 weeks, or the prognosis becomes extremely poor. He looked up. Did I miss anything? Michael's throat tightened. How did you? I have resources. Richard closed the folder. The question is, why should I use them for you? Not for me. For her. She's your daughter. That makes her connected to you. Richard stood, walked to the window. Give me one reason I should help the man who sent me to prison, who killed our father, who disappeared for 12 years. You embezzled $5 million, Michael said quietly. I didn't make you do that. No, but you chose to destroy me instead of helping me fix it. Richard's voice was bitter. Dad begged you not to call the police, begged you. He said we could handle it quietly, but you had your principles. The words were all true. Michael had stood in this room 12 years ago and listened to his father plead, had seen his mother's tears, had heard Richard's promises, and he'd called the police anyway. I thought I was doing the right thing, Michael said. You always did. Richard turned back. That was your problem. You never learned that sometimes family matters more than rules. Michael had no answer. "I'll make you a deal," Richard said. "You want my help? Prove you've changed. Work for me. 2 weeks. Night security." Vincent's short-staffed. His smile was cold. "Wear the uniform, take orders, do the grunt work, and if you make it through, I'll pay for Katie's surgery." It was designed to humiliate him. Michael understood that. "Okay," he said. Richard blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that." "When do I start?" Richard's expression flickered. Surprise or disappointment. "Vincent will have a uniform ready within the hour." The uniform was too big, the boots too tight. The work started immediately, repairing fence at the far edge of the property. 3 hours in freezing wind, his hands bleeding by the time he finished. Katie was waiting when he returned. Someone had brought her lunch. "You're hurt." She grabbed his hands. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "Just a little." He pulled his hands back. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." She climbed onto the bed. "A lady came. She was nice." "What did you tell her?" "I said I just wanted you to be happy again." Michael's chest tightened. "I'm happy. When I'm with you." "No, you're not." Katie leaned against him. "You're sad all the time. Children saw too much." "Things have been hard," he admitted, "but they're going to get better." The days blurred together. Vincent found the worst jobs: cleaning gutters in freezing rain, hauling salt bags, scrubbing garage floors. Every night, Michael came back with new bruises, new cuts, and every night, Katie was weaker. By the end of the first week, Michael had stopped caring about humiliation. The only thing that mattered was getting through one more day. One more day closer to 2 weeks. One more day of keeping Katie alive. It was on the 9th night that Vincent found him during perimeter patrol. "We need to talk," Vincent said. He handed Michael an envelope. "Documents from a lawyer friend about your family estate, your father's will." Michael took it slowly. "Look at page 12, Vincent said quietly. Michael found it. Legal documents. Not the will itself, but something else. Draft documents, in Richard's handwriting, dated 3 months ago. A new will, forged with their father's signature, leaving everything to Richard alone, cutting Michael out completely. "He's been planning to formalize this," Vincent said. "Make it look like your father changed his mind before he died. Cut you out officially, so even if you ever came back, you'd have no claim." Michael's hands shook. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I worked for your father for 23 years. He was a good man. He wouldn't want this." Vincent's voice was rough. "Richard's consumed by revenge. He's going to make you sign away any rights you have left, and I thought you should know what you're really signing." "When?" "Soon. Maybe in the next few days. He's waiting for the right moment." Vincent paused. "I'm sorry. I wish I could do more." He walked away, leaving Michael alone in the dark, with evidence of his brother's betrayal. Michael stood there for a long time. Then he folded the papers carefully and put them in his jacket. The 10th day started like the others, but at noon, Vincent found him. "Katie's sick, high fever. The housekeeper called for a doctor." Michael ran. He found her in the basement room, burning up, shivering. Her lips were pale, her breathing shallow. "Dad," she whispered, "it hurts." The doctor came within 20 minutes, examined her, took her temperature, checked her pulse. "She needs a hospital," he said. "Now. This is serious." Michael looked at Vincent. "I need to take her." "I'll drive you," Vincent said. At the hospital, they said sepsis, massive infection. Her compromised immune system couldn't fight it. They admitted her immediately, hooked her to machines. "The next 72 hours are critical," the doctor said. "But Mr. Hartwell, you need to understand. Even if she survives this infection, she still needs that transplant. And her window is closing fast." Michael sat beside her bed, held her hand, watched machines monitor her failing body. Vincent appeared in the doorway. Richard's here. Michael turned. His brother stood there in his perfect suit, looking at Katie with an expression Michael couldn't read. "How is she?" Richard asked. "Dying." The word came out flat. "The infection might kill her before the leukemia does." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I'll make sure she gets the best care here." "That's not enough," Michael's voice cracked. "She needs the transplant. And according to your timeline, I still have 4 more days to work before you'll help." Those were the terms. "Then change the terms." Michael stood. "Please. I'm begging you. Don't let my daughter die because you want to punish me." Richard's expression didn't change. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. We'll discuss it." He left before Michael could respond. Michael spent the night at the hospital. Katie's fever climbed, then broke, then climbed again. The doctors fought the infection with antibiotics. It was touch and go. By morning, she was stable. Still sick, still weak, but alive. Vincent appeared at dawn. "Richard wants to see you. Now." Michael looked at Katie, sleeping finally. "I'll stay with her," Vincent said quietly. "Go." Richard's office felt different in the early morning light, colder somehow. Richard sat behind his desk, and in front of him was a single sheet of paper. "Sit down, Michael." Michael sat. Richard pushed the paper across the desk. "This is a legal document. It states that you forfeit any and all claims to our father's estate. The house, the money, the company shares. Everything. You sign this, and you walk away with nothing." Michael looked at the paper. "And if I sign?" "Katie gets her surgery. Best hospital, best doctors, all expenses paid. She lives." "And if I don't?" "Then you leave. Today. And you figure out how to save your daughter on your own." Richard leaned back. "Those are your options." Michael picked up the paper with shaking hands. This was it. The moment Richard had been building toward. Not just humiliation, complete destruction. Taking everything, even the possibility of inheritance. And Michael had known. Vincent had warned him. The forged will, the plan to cut him out. Richard wasn't just punishing him, Richard was erasing him. Michael set the paper down, reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope Vincent had given him. He placed it on the desk between them. "What is this?" Richard asked. "Open it." Richard opened the envelope, pulled out the documents. Michael watched his brother's face as he read, watched the color drain away. "Where did you get this?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "I know what you're doing," Michael said quietly. "The forged will. The plan to make it look like Dad cut me out before he died. Vincent showed me everything." Richard's hands shook. "So what? You'll call the police again? Turn me in for fraud just like you did for embezzlement?" "No." The word hung in the air. Richard stared at him. "What?" "I'm not going to call the police." Michael's voice was steady despite the pain in his chest. "I was wrong, Richard. 12 years ago. I shouldn't have turned you in the way I did. I should have come to you first. Should have tried to help you fix it. Should have chosen my brother over the rules." Richard's expression was frozen, unreadable. "I chose principles over people," Michael continued. "I chose being right over being kind, and it destroyed our family. Killed our father. Cost me 12 years. His voice cracked. "I can't change what I did, but I can choose differently now." He picked up the pen, signed the document without reading it. "Take everything from me," Michael said. "I don't care. The house, the money, all of it. Just save my daughter. Please. That's all I'm asking." He pushed the signed paper across the desk. Richard sat there, frozen. His hands trembled as he reached for the document. He picked it up, stared at it, then at Michael. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Richard's face crumpled. His hands shook so hard the paper fell from his fingers. A sound came from his throat. Half sob, half something else. "I never wanted your money," Richard said, his voice breaking. I never wanted the house or the company or any of it. Then what did you want? I wanted my brother back. Tears streamed down Richard's face. I wanted you to say you were sorry. Not for calling the police, for the way you did it, for choosing the law over me without even trying to find another way. I'm sorry, Michael whispered. God, Richard, I'm so sorry. Richard stood abruptly, walked to the window. His shoulders shook. I've had Katie's surgery scheduled since the day you arrived, he said, his voice raw. The hospital, the doctors, everything. It was never in question. Michael's world tilted. What? All of this, the uniform, the grunt work, the humiliation. I already paid for everything. Richard turned, his face wet with tears. I was testing you, trying to see if you'd changed, if you understood what your choice cost, if you'd finally choose family over your precious integrity. Michael couldn't breathe. And just now, when I gave you that document, Richard's voice broke. I thought you'd refuse. Thought you'd threaten me with those papers Vincent gave you. Thought you'd fight back like you always did. He picked up the forged will documents, the ones Michael had put on the desk. But you didn't. You signed away everything. For Katie, without hesitation. She's my daughter. And I'm your brother. And you finally chose a person over a principle. Richard wiped his eyes roughly. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. Everything's ready. Michael's legs gave out. He sank into the chair. This was all a test? His voice sounded distant to his own ears. Yes. And you passed. Richard sat down heavily. Vincent was helping me. The documents he showed you about the forged will. I had him do that, to see what you'd do. If you'd use them against me, or... He stopped. And you didn't. You chose mercy. Michael looked at his brother, really looked at him, saw the pain and loneliness and desperate need for connection. I'm sorry, Michael said again, for everything, for 12 years ago, for not being a better brother, for all of it. I'm sorry too, Richard's voice was barely a whisper, for making you suffer, for lying, for the test. I needed to know if you still cared, if family still mattered to you. It's the only thing that matters. They sat in silence. The morning sun streamed through the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed. Finally, Richard said, Katie's surgery is at 6 tomorrow morning. The best pediatric oncologist in the state. I've arranged for post-op care, follow-up treatments, everything she'll need. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're still finishing your 2 weeks. Michael almost smiled. Fair enough. But no more grunt work. I need... Richard paused. I need my brother. Not a security guard. You have him. You always did. Richard stood, walked to a cabinet, pulled out a folder. There's something else you should see. Something real this time, not a test. He handed the folder to Michael. Inside was their father's actual will, the real one. Michael scanned it, his heart pounding. Everything was split 50-50. The house, the money, the company. All of it divided equally between both sons. You never lost your inheritance, Richard said quietly. I lied about that. Told you Dad cut you out, but he didn't. Your half has been sitting in a trust for 12 years. About $4 million now, with interest. Michael stared at the numbers. $4 million. While he'd been scraping by, watching Sarah die, watching Katie get sicker. I kept it from you out of spite, Richard continued. I wanted you to suffer like I suffered. Wanted you to think your choice cost you everything. His voice cracked. But it didn't. It just cost you me. And I'm the one who chose to stay away. Michael set the papers down with shaking hands. I don't want the money. It's not about wanting it. It's yours. It always was. Richard met his eyes. and I'm going to transfer it to you. Tomorrow, after Katie's surgery, along with the property deeds and your seat on the company board. Richard, let me do this. Let me give back what I stole from you. Richard's voice was firm. 12 years of lies. 12 years of keeping what was yours. Let me make it right. Michael stood, crossed the room, pulled his brother into a hug. Richard went stiff for a moment, then collapsed against him, sobbing. I missed you, Richard said into Michael's shoulder. Every single day for 12 years, I missed you. I missed you too. They stood there, two brothers who'd destroyed each other, trying to do what they thought was right, finally finding their way back. Katie's surgery started at 6 the next morning. Michael sat in the waiting room, unable to breathe, unable to think. Richard sat beside him. Vincent stood against the wall, having refused to leave. 8 hours later, the surgeon emerged. The transplant was successful, he said. The bone marrow is integrating well. The next 72 hours are critical for rejection, but her initial response is excellent. Michael's legs went weak. Richard caught him, held him up. She's going to be okay, the surgeon continued. You can see her in an hour once she's settled in recovery. Michael sat down hard. Richard sat beside him. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Michael said, Thank you. For everything. Don't. This is what family does. When they let Michael see her, Katie looked so small in the hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere. But her chest rose and fell steadily. Her heart rate was strong on the monitor. Hey, Dad, she whispered. Hey, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Tired, but better, I think. Her eyes drifted to where Richard stood in the doorway. Hi, Uncle Richard. Hi, Katie. Thank you. For helping. For saving me. Richard's voice was rough. You don't have to thank me. Dad said you guys made up, that you're not fighting anymore. Yeah, Richard said. We're not fighting anymore. Katie smiled. Good. Life's too short to stay mad at people you love. She fell asleep, still smiling. Michael and Richard stood on either side of her bed, watching her breathe. She's wise, Richard said quietly. She gets it from her mother. They stayed until the nurses made them leave, walked out to the parking lot in the early evening light. I talked to Mom, Richard said. She's flying in tomorrow. Michael's head snapped up. You what? She has a right to know, and you have a right to see your mother. She doesn't want to see me. She does. She just didn't know how to say it. Richard met his eyes. She never stopped loving you. She was just too hurt to admit it. The next days blurred together. Katie survived the critical 72 hours. Her body accepted the new bone marrow. The color came back to her face. The light came back to her eyes. Their mother arrived and held Michael for 10 minutes without speaking, just crying into his shoulder. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. But we'll make it okay. They stood in Katie's hospital room, 3 generations of a broken family, learning how to heal. Richard pulled Michael aside one afternoon. I've been thinking about the money, about the estate, about what to do with all of it. What do you mean? I want to start a foundation for kids like Katie, families who can't afford treatment. Richard's voice was steady. I'll use my half of the estate to fund it. Research grants, treatment assistance, support programs. Richard, and I want you to co-direct it with me, if you'll forgive me enough to try. Michael looked at his brother, saw the hope and fear and desperate need for redemption. Okay, he said. We'll try. 6 months later, Michael and Katie stood at the gates of the estate, the same gates where everything had started. But this time, the gates stood open. Vincent was there, wearing a suit instead of his uniform. He smiled when he saw them. Welcome home, boss, he said to Michael. I'm not the boss, just a co-director trying to help people. That's what bosses do, the good ones anyway. Vincent looked at Katie, who was practically bouncing with energy. "You look good, kiddo." "I'm cancer-free. 3 months," Katie beamed. "The doctors say I'm going to be fine." "That's real good," Vincent said. "They're waiting for you in the garden." The garden had been transformed. What was dead 6 months ago now bloomed with spring growth. Flowers filled carefully tended beds. New trees lined the paths. Richard and their mother waited in the center. "Can I help with the garden?" Katie asked, running ahead. "That's why we're here." Richard knelt down, handed her a small trowel. "We're planting roses, a white one for your grandmother, and a red one for second chances." Katie dug the holes carefully, planted both roses with Richard's help, patted the soil down. "Will they grow together?" she asked. "If we take care of them," Richard said, "water, sunlight, time, then yeah, they'll grow together." "Like family," Katie said, looking up at Michael. "Right. Like family." They stood in the garden as the sun set, painting the sky gold and purple. Michael thought about 12 years of anger and grief and regret, about the choice he'd made and all the ways it had destroyed and saved and changed him. He thought about Katie's question. Did you do it because you wanted to, or because you thought you were supposed to? And he finally had an answer. Both. He'd done it because it was right, and because it was hard, and because sometimes the only way to save the people you love is to hurt them first. He'd done it because his father taught him that truth mattered, and because his daughter needed to know her father was someone worth believing in. He'd done it because he was human, flawed and broken and trying his best. And somehow, impossibly, it had been enough. Katie grabbed his hand. "What are you thinking about, Dad?" "That I'm glad we came home." "Me too, even though it was scary at first." "The best things usually are." Richard walked over, stood beside them. Father, daughter, brother, looking at the roses they'd planted together. "You know what I realized?" Richard said. "You made a choice that destroyed our family, but you also made a choice that saved 27 other families. And maybe that's what integrity is. Choosing the greater good even when it costs you everything. I'm still sorry for how I did it. I know, and I'm sorry for how I responded." Richard put his hand on Michael's shoulder. "But we're here now, together. That's what matters." Their mother called them to dinner. They walked toward the house, 3 generations learning to be whole again. Vincent held the door. "Welcome home." And this time, Michael believed it. That night, after Katie was asleep and their mother had retired, Michael stood at the gates one last time. Vincent found him there. "Can't sleep?" Vincent asked. "Just thinking about how much can change in 6 months. You made it through. You all did. Thanks to you. For showing me those documents. For helping me see what Richard needed." Vincent shook his head. "I just played my part. You and Richard did the hard work." They stood in comfortable silence. "Your father would be proud," Vincent said finally, "of both of you." Michael smiled. "I hope so." He walked back toward the house, toward his family, toward the future they were building together. The gates stood open behind him. The house glowed with warmth and light, and the sound of people learning to love each other despite everything. Michael didn't look back. He'd spent 12 years looking back, trapped in the moment when everything fell apart. But standing here now, with Katie healthy and his brother beside him and his mother finally home, Michael understood something he hadn't before. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something better from the broken pieces. About choosing love without abandoning truth. About finding your way home, even when the path seemed impossible. He'd made the hardest choice of his life 12 years ago. He'd spend the rest of his life living with the consequences, both terrible and beautiful. But he'd made it through. They all had. And that, finally, was enough.